They laughed when she fell off the wall. They whispered when she couldn't lift the rope. To them, she was just a quiet, trembling girl who didn't belong in a place built for warriors. But they had no idea who she really was. She didn't argue. She didn't fight back. She didn't need to, because the moment she took off her shirt for the medical exam, the entire base went silent. Even the General 3 stars on his collar and decades of combat behind his eyes froze in place. He looked at her shoulder and whispered just one phrase. That's Shadow Element 12, a unit that never officially existed, a unit whose missions were erased from history. And now, its mark was inked on the back of the recruit everyone thought was a mistake. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about honor, about quiet strength, and about what happens when the most dangerous person in the room is also the most underestimated. At Fort Sentinel, a rugged army training base nestled in the Georgia pines, 18-year-old Emily Carson looked painfully out of place. She was barely 5 feet tall, weighed maybe 100 pounds, soaking wet, and moved with the quiet hesitation of someone trying not to be noticed. And people noticed. That morning, as the sun crept over the parade ground, Sergeant First Class Bennett scanned his clipboard and barked out names with the seasoned indifference of a man who'd trained soldiers for decades. Recruits fidgeted in the heat, trying to adjust to their uniforms, their boots, their fear. All except Emily, who stood utterly still, her green eyes focused straight ahead, calm, too calm. Let's be honest, one of the older recruits whispered to his buddy, loud enough for others to hear. She looks like she got lost on her way to the Girl Scouts. Laughter rippled through the group. Emily didn't flinch. That only made them laugh harder. It got worse during the obstacle course. The others hurled themselves over walls and crawled through mud like they were auditioning for an action movie. Emily? She struggled. Her body looked like it might snap in half during the rope climb. Her hands trembled as she tried, again and again, to scale the tall wall but never reached the top. They laughed. Even Sergeant Bennett, clipboard in hand, shook his head and muttered, "Won't last a week." By lunch, Emily had become a joke. She sat alone in the mess hall, slowly picking at her tray while the others traded stories about how hard she'd failed. But she never spoke up, never defended herself, just kept her eyes on the ground, shoulders hunched, almost like she was trying to disappear. That afternoon, the recruits were lined up outside the medical building for their initial physical inspections. One by one, they filed inside, just another step in the bureaucratic machine of basic training. And then it was Emily's turn. She walked into the fluorescent-lit room and quietly followed instructions. Her vitals were taken, reflexes checked, posture evaluated, all routine. "Remove your shirt, please," the medic said. She hesitated for a beat. Then, wordlessly, she slipped off her fatigue blouse, revealing her bare shoulders and upper back. That's when the room changed. The senior medic, Dr. Halverson, froze mid-sentence. His pen paused halfway through a check mark. A nurse gasped softly and dropped a clipboard. A few feet away, a junior lieutenant squinted and stepped closer. There, inked in perfect symmetry on Emily's left shoulder blade, was a black triangle pierced by a lightning bolt, simple, precise, unassuming. Unless you knew what it meant. And one person in the room did. Because, right at that moment, the door opened and Major General Thomas Wexler stepped in. He wasn't expected. The general had arrived on a surprise inspection tour, and his mere presence sent staff scrambling all morning. He was known for two things: an encyclopedic knowledge of military protocol and his decades spent in Black Ops Command. He wasn't there long before his gaze fell on the tattoo. He stopped cold. For a long second, no one moved. Then Wexler took 2 slow steps toward Emily. The room had gone silent. Paperwork halted. Conversations died. Even the overhead buzzing of the fluorescent lights seemed to fade. He stared at the mark on her shoulder like he'd seen a ghost. "That's Shadow Element 12, he whispered. The entire room froze. A nurse dropped a pen. The medic straightened his posture, suddenly pale. No one said a word, because they all knew that name wasn't supposed to exist. Shadow Element 12 wasn't just classified, it was buried. It had been a joint special operations unit, so secret that its files were locked beneath Pentagon clearance no ordinary soldier could touch. 3 years of missions no one could confirm, carried out by soldiers who didn't officially exist. Then one day it vanished, scrubbed from every system, wiped clean. And now, somehow, This trembling teenage girl, this joke of a recruit who couldn't climb a wall, was standing there with its emblem permanently etched into her skin. "Where did you get that tattoo?" General Wexler asked. Emily didn't flinch. She met his eyes with a calm, measured gaze and said quietly, "Local shop back home, sir." Thought it looked cool. He didn't believe her. No one did. But she gave him nothing more. The general didn't push. He simply turned to the base commander, Colonel Briggs, and said, "I want her flagged. No more training. No outside contact. And she will report to my office immediately after this exam." The room erupted into hushed chaos as Emily put her shirt back on, as if nothing had happened. Outside the clinic, the air buzzed not with heat, but with rumors. By dinner, everyone on base had heard some version of what happened. That the general froze when he saw her. That she bore the mark of a ghost unit. That the girl who couldn't climb a wall might be something no one could explain. And still, Emily didn't say a word. She sat at her usual table, alone. But now no one was laughing. They were staring, whispering, and wondering. The next morning, Fort Sentinel wasn't the same. Whispers chased Emily Carson down every hallway, though no one dared speak to her directly. In the mess hall, recruits tried not to look but failed. Forts paused midair. Conversations died mid-sentence. Some stared at her shoulder like it might start glowing. She ate her oatmeal in silence, just like always. But she could feel that air had changed. What had once been mocking laughter was now fearful curiosity. And that fear wasn't just among the recruits. Inside the base headquarters, Colonel Briggs paced his office like a man whose day had taken a sharp turn off the map. Across from him, General Wexler stood still, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the closed file in his hands. The words Shadow Element 12 were stamped across the top, but the pages inside were mostly blacked out. Even with his clearance, Wexler was getting more red tape than answers. "She's just a kid," Briggs muttered, "barely old enough to vote. And you're telling me she has a tattoo from a unit that doesn't exist anymore?" Wexler didn't look up. "I'm telling you, that tattoo was never public. Not in any database. Not on the internet. If she has it, she either earned it or she's compromised something very, very dangerous." Briggs swallowed hard. "What do we do?" "We bring her in," Wexler said. "But carefully. She knows protocol too well. No sudden moves. No pressure. Let's see what she gives us." That afternoon, Emily received orders. Report to Colonel Briggs' office immediately. No details. No explanation. The walk across the base was long and quiet. Recruits parted like water around her. Some nodded stiffly. Others avoided her gaze. And a few, like the burly recruit named Stark, who used to mock her openly, now couldn't even meet her eyes. She knocked once, entered, and found both General Wexler and Colonel Briggs waiting. "Private Carson," the general said evenly, "please have a seat." Emily sat. She didn't ask why she was there. Didn't fidget. Didn't protest. She just waited. Wexler studied her for a long time. He didn't ask about her family, or her background, or even why she joined the army. He simply asked, "How did you come to bear that tattoo?" Emily's expression didn't change. "I got it 5 years ago," she said. "Artists said it was a unique design." "You're telling me," Wexler said slowly, "you walked into a random tattoo parlor and picked a design so classified that even most generals aren't clear to know it exists?" "That's what I'm telling you," she replied, cool and polite. Briggs scoffed. Wexler didn't. Instead, he leaned forward. "You're not an average recruit. You know that. You know I know that. But you haven't violated any orders. You haven't spoken out of turn. You've done everything exactly by the book." He paused, almost like you've been trained a very specific way. Emily blinked. Once, but said nothing. Briggs jumped in. "We have options here. If you're holding back classified connections, we need to know. If you're some kind of deep cover asset." "I'm not at liberty to discuss any of that, sir," Emily said gently, but firmly. Silence filled the room like fog. It wasn't defiance. It was discipline. Wexler sighed, then stood. "Until we can determine the extent of this situation, you'll be placed on administrative hold. No further training. Restricted to base. You'll have quarters and meals provided. But you're not to leave or engage with other personnel beyond what's required. Is that understood?" Emily nodded. "Understood, sir." Back at the barracks, her absence became a legend in real time. Nobody knew where she was. But everyone had a theory. She's CIA, someone said. Maybe an essay, whispered another. Nah, she's probably a whistleblower under protection. No, Dadesh part of something even the general's scared of. Whatever the story, one thing was clear, no one laughed anymore. Not even Stark. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Wexler began calling in favors. Pentagon, Special Operations Command, even a few private lines people whose names had never been printed. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. But most of the replies were the same. Shadow Element 12 was disbanded. Classified. Burned. Until one message came through. Encrypted. Untraceable. In short, Emily Carson. Verified. Transition Protocol 7A active. Maintain operational discretion. Full clearance to integrate. It was enough. Enough to stop the investigation cold. Enough to change the tone entirely. The next day, Emily was summoned again. Same office. Same two men. But this time, the room felt different. Respectful. Wexler didn't waste time. Private Carson, you're not under investigation anymore. Your presence here has been cleared by a program even I don't fully understand. But I've been told you're authorized. And you're here for a reason. Briggs just stared at her like she was made of glass. Emily nodded once. Thank you, sir. No, Wexler said, softer now. Thank you. For following protocol. For doing everything by the book, even when the whole world was staring at you. That takes more discipline than most soldiers ever learn. Briggs coughed, finally finding his voice. So what now? Wexler turned to Emily. That's up to her. Fort Sentinel had seen its share of secrets over the years. But nothing like this. When word got out that Emily Carson was returning to regular training, jaws dropped across the entire company. The girl who couldn't climb a rope. The one they'd called deadweight, mule, a guaranteed dropout. Now, she walked through the barracks like a shadow with gravity. She didn't strut. She didn't smirk. She didn't even look around. But every recruit stepped aside. Even Stark Big. Loud Stark offered a silent nod when she passed. Something had changed. No one knew what had happened behind those closed doors with the colonel and the general, but the fact that she was back, in uniform, moving through the course again, that was enough. Enough to make people nervous. And curious. At the training field, Sergeant Bennett watched her from a distance, arms crossed, lips pursed. He hadn't said a word since she reappeared. But the clipboard in his hand was empty now. He wasn't recording times anymore. He was watching her. And then it happened. They ran the obstacle course against same setup as before. Same walls. Same ropes. Same balance beam slick with dew. But this time, Emily didn't hesitate. She moved like she'd done it 100 times. Rope climb. 4-point technique. Perfect rhythm. Up in seconds. Wall scaling. She used leverage, not strength technique that some soldiers don't learn until Ranger School. Crawling. Clean, fast, and precise. Her boots never dragged. Her breathing never broke tempo. Even the slick balance beam, which sent 3 other recruits into the mud, couldn't stop her. She didn't just complete the course. She dominated it. By the time she crossed the finish line, a full 20 seconds ahead of the top time, there was no laughter. No muttering. Just stunned silence. Bennett lowered his clipboard. Outstanding performance, Private Carson, he said, loud and clear. It was the first time he'd used her name without sarcasm. The recruits whispered that night in the mess hall. The tone had shifted. She was holding back before. Had to be. Maybe she's not just cleared for something, maybe she's already done things we can't even imagine. Even Stark, who once joked about tying a balloon to her to help her climb the wall, approached her table, tray in hand. Mind if I sit? He asked. Emily looked up from her meal. There was no judgment in her eyes. No smugness. Just calm acceptance. Sure. They sat in silence for a moment. Then he said quietly, I was wrong about you. I know, she replied. Later that week, during a night navigation exercise known for confusing even seasoned soldiers, Emily completed her route in record time. Not only that, she helped 2 other recruits who had veered dangerously off course. One of the instructors, watching through infrared scopes, noted how she corrected them using terrain, not compass. How she coached them gently but firmly. And how she stayed with them until they reached the checkpoint, sacrificing her own time to make sure they made it. Who is she? The instructor muttered. By then, even the instructors had started whispering about her. Not just because of her skills, but because of her silence. She didn't talk about her past, didn't explain the tattoo, didn't capitalize on the attention. She simply performed. But General Wexler wasn't done with her. One afternoon, a black SUV arrived at Fort Sentinel. No markings, no fanfare, just tinted windows and a quiet engine. Inside, Wexler, alone. He requested to speak to Emily not in an office, but out at the range. Informal. Neutral ground. They walked side by side as the sun dipped low across the Georgia tree line. "You're not here by accident," he said finally. "That clearance I received, it didn't come from the Pentagon. It came from a vault I haven't had access to in 10 years. Emily said nothing. "You didn't ask for this assignment, did you?" She shook her head. "No, sir. But you accepted it." "Yes, sir." Wexler stopped and turned to face her. "I was one of the last commanding officers of Shadow Element 12, he said. "We lost half our team in that final mission. The rest vanished. No files. No funerals. Just gone." Emily's eyes softened just slightly. A flicker of recognition. "You knew one of them," Wexler said. "Didn't you?" She looked at him, then not as a subordinate, but as someone who had carried a burden alone for too long. "My father," she said quietly. The air stood still. Wexler exhaled. "Your father was Captain Daniel Carson. He saved my life." Emily nodded. "He died on the extraction. And they sent you here as what?" "A transition. A chance to earn it," she said. "Not to inherit it." Wexler looked at her like seeing something rare. Something honorable. "They told me to observe," she continued. "Not to reveal. Not to take shortcuts. Just to start over. Earn it from scratch." And she had. Without a word. Without using a name. Without claiming a legacy. "You've done more than that," Wexler said. "I've seen dozens of programs, hundreds of operators. But what you've done here with no support, no resources, no fanfare, that's leadership. That's power." Emily didn't smile, but her shoulders straightened. "You'll have offers, Carson. Officer school. Intelligence tracks. Special operations if you want back in." She shook her head. "Not yet. I want to finish this. The right way." Wexler placed a hand on her shoulder, one with the tattoo. "Then finish it," he said. "And when you're ready, we'll be waiting." As he walked away, the sun dipped below the trees, casting long shadows over the training grounds. And Emily stood there quietly, watching them stretch across the field like memories of things that once were and things still to come. By the final week of basic training, Emily Carson's name was no longer whispered with suspicion. Now it carried weight. She hadn't delivered any dramatic speeches. She hadn't revealed her background. But her actions, steady, skilled, selfless, had reshaped how every recruit and instructor saw her. Even Sergeant Bennett, once quick to dismiss her, now used her story as a teaching point. "Don't judge on day one," he said during a lecture. "Some soldiers show up already carrying more than you'll ever know." And the recruits listened, because by then, everyone respected Emily. Not because of rumors or rank or some mythical tattoo, but because she never used any of it to shield herself. She earned her place the hard way. During a brutal multi-day field exercise, mud, rain, fatigue, and full packs, Emily emerged not just competent, but essential. When a fellow recruit suffered a twisted ankle halfway through the navigation course, she didn't hesitate. She adjusted his gear, redistributed the weight, and walked beside him for 5 hours, straight, refusing to let him fall behind. Later, when their squad got lost on a night op, it was Emily who corrected course not by compass, but by reading stars and terrain. Quietly, accurately, no drama, just results. By the final morning of training, it was clear to everyone. This wasn't a girl who needed help fitting in. She was the standard now. Graduation day. The sun rose clear and crisp over Fort Sentinel's parade ground. Family members filled the bleachers, dressed in their Sunday best, waving cameras and handmade banners. But Emily stood alone in formation. No parents in the crowd. No name called from the bleachers. Just her shoulders squared, boots polished, eyes steady. And that was enough. General Wexler was in attendance, standing beside Colonel Briggs in full dress uniform. He'd chosen not to interfere in the ceremony. No announcements. No press. That was Emily's request. "I'm just a soldier today," she'd said. Still, he watched her every move. Sergeant Bennett read the names of graduates. Medals were awarded. Honors handed out. One by one, recruits stepped forward, received their insignia, saluted, and marched off the platform. Then came the final award, Exemplary Soldier Leadership Citation, a title rarely given, and only to those whose actions had raised the bar for everyone around them. Bennett's voice rang out. Private Emily Carson, front and center. She stepped forward, silent, calm. There were no gasps now, only applause. Long, respectful, thunderous. As Bennett handed her the citation, he leaned in just enough for her to hear, voice steady. I was wrong about you. Emily gave the smallest of nods. I know, and that was all. After the ceremony, Colonel Briggs approached her personally with her assignment packet. 3 options, just like before. Officer Candidate School, Intelligence Analysis Division, or Special Forces Pipeline. He tapped the envelope in her hands. You earned all of them, and I don't say that lightly. Emily looked down at the sealed folder, then back up. With respect, sir, I'd like something else. Briggs raised an eyebrow. I want assignment to a regular line unit, she said. Infantry. Ground level. Are you sure? He asked, surprised. That's not what anyone expected. I didn't come here to skip steps, Emily said simply. I came to learn the Army from the bottom up. I don't want to command a team before I know what it means to be in one. Briggs was quiet for a moment, then gave a small, satisfied nod. You're the kind of soldier this Army needs more of. He reached into his desk drawer, pulled a different set of papers, and handed them to her. 82nd Airborne Division. Fort Bragg. She smiled. The faintest, realest smile anyone at Sentinel had ever seen from her. That evening at the barracks, the recruits were packing. Some were shipping off to new assignments. Others would stay behind for further training. Stark approached her again this time, not as a recruit, but as a friend. Hey, he said awkwardly. I just wanted to say thanks. For not rubbing it in. For helping us, even when we didn't deserve it. You didn't know me, Emily replied. Now you do. He chuckled. Still don't know much, but I know enough to follow your lead. She held out her hand. He took it, shook once firmly. That night, she walked the ground alone. The same fields where she had once fallen in the dirt, shaking, mocked, discarded. Now silent, peaceful. She paused at the obstacle wall, the tall one, ran her fingers along the wood. It was smoother now, or maybe she was just stronger. The tattoo beneath her uniform didn't burn anymore. It didn't weigh her down. It simply was a mark of a past she didn't hide from, but also didn't use to demand respect. Because she had earned that, too. The quiet way. Greatness doesn't ask for attention. It simply shows up. It climbs the wall, carries the weight, helps without being asked, and walks away when the job is done. Some soldiers lead by shouting, but others? They lead by moving forward, step by step, in silence. Emily Carson didn't rise through the ranks by revealing who she was. She rose because of what she did. And that was louder than any name.